My guest today is Menachem Silverstein. He's an Orthodox Jewish writer, comedian, and ordained rabbi. He's written for TBS Digital, IFC Digital, and has been on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and is currently a regular at the Hollywood Laugh Factory. You can check out more about Menachem on his social media pages at Menachem Silverstein. If you're a weekly newsletter of mine, we have a giveaway going on, and you can enter to win by please leaving a review about the show and today's guest on Apple Podcasts, and make sure you're subscribed. Also, head over to solomonezra.com, follow me on Instagram at king_Solomon8, and Facebook at Solomon Ezra Berezin to learn more. Make sure to do something actionable with your learnings today, and be sure to let us know about it via Messenger or social media. Now on to the show with Menachem Silverstein.
How are you? Good morning or
I'm doing
afternoon for
well.
you.
Yeah, good morning to you. It's nice to connect and see each other virtually.
Definitely. And I guess you're 2 hours into the future. So tell me, how's the future? Does it get better?
Yes, well, here in Texas especially, we have a lot of very nice warm weather. But
Nice.
I'm assuming it's like
Sure.
that way with you in California.
Well, it is amazing and beautiful during the day, but like in the morning, it could be 45 degrees. And
Yeah.
my thin California blood, I'm like shivering. 45 degrees? I need to put on a down coat.
Do you have any nice kind of morning routines and stuff that later gets you into your creative um, kind of space?
So it's kind of funny. I try to have routines, and I'm actually currently back on my routine. And I feel like when I can get on my routine, I'm better. But and I'll explain how I break them. So what I really like to do is wake up in the morning, go to the gym. I do like parkour, like kind of like gymnastics type things because I get bored when it's just like lifting weights or running on a treadmill or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and then after that, I like to daven, um, have some breakfast, meditate for 5 minutes, and then kind of start my day. And when I can do that, I'm so productive and it's an amazing day. But usually what happens is, and this is, I guess, partially creative brain, I'm decently productive during the day. Then 11 p.m. hits, and I'm the most prolific and productive person from
Mm.
11 to 3:30 in the morning. Like that is the hours that I strive. But then if I'm up till 3:30 in the morning, either I'm like a wreck the next day, my kids wake me up at 7 a.m. Like it's just, so I'm trying to teach myself and train myself to have those creative hours for the day.
Well, what times do you normally perform on stage?
And then performing on stage, like sometimes occasionally I'll get like a 7:30 show, but my wife doesn't love that because we usually put our kids to sleep then. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, you're gonna put the kids to sleep yourself, deuces, let's do a show. The shows that I prefer, my wife prefers, are the later ones. So like a lot of times the show will start at 9:30, 10 o'clock and go
Yeah.
till at least 12:30.
Yeah, as it seems like, especially if that's the time that your creative just brain lights up. But
Yeah,
anyway, let's rewind a little bit.
perfect.
I'd love to hear a little bit, about your background and how you grew up and got into comedy. Um, you know, as we know, and this is more of like a health podcast, but comedy is such a huge part of just transformation in general. And I'd love to hear a lot about it because I think also sometimes when it comes to thinking of pursuing a comedy career, especially in the Jewish community, it may not have been looked at as in such a positive light. As far as like a lot of the comedy sometimes can be vulgar or whatever the case may be. But I love watching the different things that you've been doing, and I'm relatively new to it, just following on Instagram and listening to different interviews. And God willing, one time in person being able to come to a show. But
Every time.
with all that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So first off, I think that you, kind of touched on something that I've actually been looking into a lot lately,
Mm.
which is the fact that, comedy and mental health really do kind of coincide because I've been working on a class. I'm teaching this like mini comedy seminar for Yachad in LA. And I was kind of looking into it. And part of the thing that I am going to be teaching and discussing is just kind of like smiling and being happy, and the fact that you connect to people through smiling, the fact that you can express yourself through smiling, and just like it was funny, like I read this online and I tried it, and it's kind of a crazy thing. Like, if you're having a bad day, make yourself smile in the mirror as big as you can. And
Mhm,
it looks crazy, but do it a couple times and you feel better. Just
mhm,
from smiling, like, you feel better. It's kind of like it says in Tanya, the thing where
mhm,
it's like, oh my gosh, I don't love God. I can't connect to God. And it's like, fake it, pretend to.
mhm.
Just pretend to. Just pretend to, and then it helps you. Like, the second you can get your mind to like, oh, like, understand the concept, you can do it. So I think that when it comes to like, comedy itself, and one of the things I really like is, just kind of like connecting and bringing joy to people. So with that being said, welcome to my comedian villain origin story. Um,
No, but it's also just a very powerful thing you said, because we kind of grew up in a way thinking, well, not really knowing what to do with, emotions or body language with when you're feeling down or whatever. But really, this is such a transformational shift, because it's like, yeah, fake it, just start smiling, because the way that you're like, change your body expression to be more outward, to be in a position of as if you're, joyful and whatnot. And that will actually change the way you're thinking and looking at it and perceiving a different situation. So
yeah,
just thought I'd
and
comment. Yeah.
no, please. And it's also I think it's a beautiful thing, because like smiling and laughter breaks down all barriers,
Yeah.
like language barriers. I can't speak your language, but if I'm smiling, I'm happy. And if you're smiling and laughing, like, we know what's going on. And it's just
Yeah.
this kind of beautiful, deeper connection
Mhm.
that, you could have. It's like a deeper form of communication, being able to, express that. And especially, like, growing up in an Orthodox community, which we'll, kind of get into the details of it. Well, I'm saying it's not necessarily specifically to the Orthodox community. It's also like being a man, and also, you're not really supposed to express your emotions or express your feelings or be as in tune and in touch with those things. So I grew up Chabad. I grew up Orthodox Jew, from Brooklyn, where Jews are made right off the press. Um, and in my community, it was kind of an interesting thing and an interesting time where, like, we weren't supposed to have outside influence when it came to like music and movies and comedy and things like that. We even, like, to get into school, you had to sign papers that you didn't have a TV and stuff at home, which
Wow.
I actually just tweeted about, which was kind of like a funny experience to share with like the non-Jewish world and see how they reacted. But yeah, so like, there wasn't the outside influence, and there was a very like specific type of music. Like, you had the Alvin Fried and the Benny Freeman. They're just like a lot of horns and a lot of like, kind of like a certain style of singing, and that was the only like version of like creative expression. And even in art, there was like this one, like artist guy who was like the biggest artist guy in Crown Heights. um and when it came to comedy, there also like wasn't that much. Like, there was Jackie Mason and stuff, but I don't know, like, my parents didn't really like show me that much Jackie Mason. And like, Elon Gold was on the come up and stuff, but there wasn't really like prominent comedic figures as much. And then as I got older, like, Monticello hit the scene, and it was like, oh, you don't just have to do one genre of music, you can do
Mhm.
other genres of music. Mendy Pellin came on the scene as a comedian, and he did his like comedic talk show and stuff, and kind of showed, at least to me and my small world, like, there are other things. Um, so it was actually kind of funny. My parents, when I turned, so my parents are Balta Shiva. So my parents weren't raised religious, and they became religious later in life. So like, by the time they got married, they were already religious. So I was raised religious, but they kind of came from a secular background. So at 18, on my 18th birthday, they took me to dinner, and they kind of sat me down, and they're like, what do you like want to do for a living? Like, what's your plan? Are you going to become a shliach? Are you going to become a rabbi? Are you going to become an accountant, a lawyer, whatever? And by the way, let me know if we're going on too long. I
No,
can,
you're all
I'm
good.
a schmoozer. So basically, they sat me down. They're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to create stories. I want to do storytelling. I want to, write and like make movies, make TV shows. I'm not exactly sure yet. Maybe act in them. Definitely involved in the creation of them. And they were like, that's like a terrible idea. How are you gonna like make money? You're an Orthodox Jew. And I kind of like used like the Mendy Pell and Montesquieu thing to show like, here's how it can be done. And I had a full plan and a full structure in place.
Beautiful.
And my parents were kind of like, they were like not thrilled with it because they kind of wanted me to potentially like be like a lawyer or something more Jewish. But at the same time, I had a very thorough plan. So they weren't like, that's stupid, but like they had to kind of listen. But at the same time, they were like not thrilled with it. I then actually got into music. And at first, I guess that's the Montessio thing. I first started rapping in a band. So you can imagine how white the rest of the band was if I was the, rapper. Because again, it was kind of, I knew how to write music, but I couldn't play it well enough. And I knew how to sing, but I couldn't sing well enough. So I was like, how can I get myself involved in the music? So I would write the music and then I would rap because I could like follow the beat and I could rhyme. And then while I was doing that, I was always kind of like in my house creating sketches and different, things. I was like making people laugh and things. And then eventually that led into like, once my band started falling apart, I sat and was like, what do I really, really want to do? And what am I good at? And that led into, kind of the writing.
Interesting. I find it also pretty interesting that you said like your parents grew up like that's how I'm grown up and more about the shuva. I kind of would think, well, that's just more so stereotyping as an individual thing, but that they would be perhaps more encouraging with, following your own path, but I guess not.
Well, so it's kind
Like
of funny
because they understand it, like in a sense, they didn't grow up a certain way and then had to go through their own journey. That experience, I would think maybe would help them empathize and be like, okay, our son, doing this thing, and ultimately it'll lead him.
Well, I'll tell you what happened to my parents, which is kind of funny. First of all, I started hearing an echo. Wait, no, it's gone. That was weird. That might have been in my head. Oh no, I am going crazy. So what happened with my parents were, technically they might have been a little bit more opened, or they probably were a little bit more opened to, things outside of the traditional, like what an Orthodox Jew does. You sell things on Amazon, you work in real estate, you sell medical supplies, cash advance now, like there's kind of these trendy, like whatever it is. But for my parents, they had 7 kids. They didn't really have help or a base to fall on because none of their parents were religious. So they just saw how expensive it was to be an Orthodox Jew. And as much as they empathized and sympathized, like my mother, when she was younger, before she became religious, was an actress. So as much as she like empathized with, oh, creativity is amazing, I know you want to have this creative career, she was like if you are an Orthodox family and you want to have, like 5+ kids and you want to feed them kosher food and send them to yeshiva and all of these things, you need to make crazy money. And as an artist, it's very hard to make money.
So what was that plan that you made and presented them, and how's that going now?
The plan completely shifted. And I think that that's kind of part of the beauty of life. And I think that the most important lesson that I learned in life is, kind of a mensch schacht and Gott lacht, which means, a man thinks and God laughs, where you have to be as planned as possible. Don't go in without a plan, but you have to be open enough to move it around. So my plan was kind of to, and to an extent I did follow it, but just in a different way, where Mendy had his show, I was like, okay, I'm going to come up with my show. And then I'm going to come up with I'm going to utilize, Crown Heights Info and COL, which were the 2 Chabad biggest websites, to get my view counts up. And then I'm going to take those and I'm going to leverage the view counts to try to get, sponsorships, to make better episodes, to get more views. I kind of had this, thorough plan. And to an extent, I followed it because when I had my band, it was funny. I had a bunch of comedian friends at the time, and they would put out clips on YouTube that wouldn't really get views, and all my videos would break 10,000+ views, which I know now wasn't that much, but back then was a lot of views. And how I would do it was I would use the Jewish channels. I get my videos on Shmeis, I get my videos on Crown Heights Info, I get my videos on COL, and I'd kind of maintain that core Jewish audience to build and leverage. And then even now, with my, Instagram and stuff, it's the same kind of, finding my niche of the type of video I make, making the videos, trying to get people to sponsor the videos or, put their products in the videos, things like that.
Well, I think I could use that kind of help
right?
with
So some brand
getting
marketing.
yeah, exactly, getting more seen. Well, it's well, like just also because with it's a smart approach actually. When I've worked with different business coaches or whatnot, because I have a health coaching practice,
Nice.
you want to help everybody, or you want to speak to everybody, whether it's comedy or whatever. And it seems paradoxical, but the more specific and whoever like you talk to, so like the Jewish community, or even more specific like the Hasidic community, and then it surprisingly actually reaches more people.
Yeah.
So it was
It
a very smart approach that you had and started with. But also sounds like that plan is kind of a vision per se, that like you were saying, you're not necessarily going according to the plan, but you had this vision in sight of, how you think, how you want to be recognized, or the different ways you want to contribute, whether it's the writing, the different movies, the comedy, all of the above.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like from when I was younger, the vision was clear, and then it was kind of like about how to potentially get there.
Mhm.
So I always, again, like I loved entertaining people. I love making people laugh and giving people a good time. But to me, I think that one of the things that was very important to me was like showing people that an Orthodox Jew is a normal person. I think that that's a very important thing. You look at, mainstream media, and Orthodox Jews are like the punchline to a joke, or they're considered these weird foreign creatures. It was kind of like they had this episode,
I used
like
to think
NBC
that.
put out yeah, NBC put out an episode of this show called Nurses, and you have these like bizarre Orthodox Jews that won't take a bone graft because maybe it'll be from a Muslim person or whatever. Like these weird kind of like creatures that live among us, or they're the punchline of a joke, like in like Snatch at the beginning, where they dress like the Orthodox Jews to rob the bank, to rob the Diamond District and whatever. So to me, I was like, I want to create entertainment where it's, like a buddy movie and the best friend's an Orthodox Jew, because that happens sometimes. You know what I mean? Like a Seth Rogen movie where one of the characters is an Orthodox Jew, because why not? Like
Yeah.
it happens, especially like again, as a comedian, I'm the only like Orthodox Jewish comedian that's like hanging around, and it's like sometimes after a show, like we'll go and get drinks, and it's like you know a black guy, Hispanic guy, a Muslim guy, and me, and we're just hanging out, and
Awesome.
that's
Yeah.
like the bar scene, and we're just at the bar getting a drink or getting a coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
So like to me, I was like, I'd love to find a way to do that. So through like sketch, I've been able to do that a little bit, and thanks to King Batch for being like the first person to like do videos with me, where he did that, where like in the videos it was like I was just his buddy who happened to like have tzitzis and a kippah, and I think that it was brave of him to just like do that, and it was awesome of him to let me do that with him. So hopefully like the plan is I'm like building up to be able to do that on a larger scale.
Yeah. Well, how have you been able to relate to not only relate to different audiences, but also bring them in uh, and show them your world?
So again, I think the relatability is there because as an Orthodox Jew in the 21st century, it's like me, I am, like I'm a script writer, so I watch television and I watch movies. So like I hang out with people who are Jewish and not Jewish. So I do have like, the culture element to be able to, fit in and hang out with other people. And then what I bring to the table is just, like I I point out the differences between us in a comedic lens. So I joke about, having a yarmulke. I joke about how people perceive me. I even have jokes about, like different elements of the Torah. So what I try to do is I want to be like an Orthodox or like a Jewish comic for everyone. I don't want to be like a Jewish comic just for Jews. So my whole thing is like kind of like I do with my Instagram sketches is like, what's a yarmulke used for? Or, like I
Yeah.
joke, or if I joke about like specific Jewish things, it'll be like the really, really basic stuff. Like everyone knows that like Abraham got circumcised, or we don't eat, pig or, pork or whatever. So just joking about like certain elements of ridiculousness. Like, again, God and Abraham had a conversation. They're like, let's make a bond. And God's like, what are you going to give me? And Abraham's first go-to thing was like, my foreskin, piece of my penis. He had cows, he had money, he had everything. That's the first thing he goes to. And we're like, that guy should lead the Jews. it's a funny thing. And I think that clearly I believe in it, and we should be able to joke about it all together. I think that makes it relatable. And I think the most important thing, at least like, as a Chabad person who wants to make Judaism tangible to everyone and, just like accessible to everyone, I think part of that is making it relatable and showing that like, being Jewish is about asking questions. So like you can ask questions, you can poke fun. Certain things are a little ridiculous at times, but you know what I mean? We're all asking the questions together and we're all learning and figuring it out together.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with it, because also just my own whole introduction into learning like different Hasidus is that it illuminates different parts of the Torah and like makes it relatable in a sense that you can see yourself within those characters. So the fact that you also bring a comedic light to it is very inviting, and in a in a light and fun way. So I appreciate
100%.
yeah.
It's like the hardest pill to swallow about Judaism is the fact that like God told Abram to sacrifice his son and he was like, I'll do it.
Yeah, very quickly.
And very
That's
quickly,
what
like,
the
sure.
sages comment. This is what the sages comment is like his best quality. That alacrity. It's like,
and he's like, I'll do it. It's exactly like the first thing he's going to give to God is the tip of his penis, and the second thing is like, oh yeah, my son. Like those are the two. Like my cows and my money. No, those things I'll give. But to me, it's kind of like one of those things you're talking about the characters being relatable. It's like that was never a relatable story.
Yeah.
Until COVID, I'm stuck inside my house with my son for a year and a half. If God asked me to sacrifice him, like maybe I'd say yes. You know what I mean? I'm like I'm not saying yes, but maybe. If I was in that position, like I get it a little more now. Yeah. By the way, now that like I'm saying we opened the conversation, if you're willing to share, I'd love to hear a little also more about you. Like, so how were you raised, and then how did you find like your orthodoxy?
Yeah, cool. Cool. Thank you for asking that. Considering usually I'm the one asking the questions here, but it's the peak when we kind of started talking about your morning routine per se. You mentioned one thing that is probably the number one tool in my life, which is meditation. And I grew up more conservative, but a little bit, more so than reform. So, but I didn't know about like orthodox really much, or reform. I just how I raised, and I'm thankful for this, knowing that a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. I didn't know there were really different labels. So if somebody asks me, and some people do, did you keep Shabbat and keep kosher growing up? I said yes, to the extent of which I knew what it was. Like I kept Shabbat. I didn't know the things you didn't do, like you don't drive or whatever. Like we would go to the services and whatnot. But in some people who listen to the show or read the different stuff that I write as well, and know that my passion and practice in meditation was through kind of college, and I played college basketball, and through that, and
that's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, I actually in my my final, I was in college for 4 or 5 years, and in that 5th year, well, I got out of school, so I was still in Dallas where I went to school for the 5th year, and I actually did do stand-up comedy 4 times.
Amazing.
So this is why this is kind of like a fun conversation, because, and I had my parents come to me, and this is also why I wanted to talk to you, because in my experience, I'd gone to open mic nights, and the scenes there are just, that's not for me. Like, it's so kind of crass, and my funniest joke, or like based on how many laughs I got, was I'm hearing people talking about their lives and how, hopefully this is not talking bad about people, but it was just like, yeah, I smoked a joint all day and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, man, all you guys' lives are just depressing. Like trying to bring like joke to it, because it felt like such a dark kind of environment. But anyways, that was my experience, and I know you have to continue with it, but it was a way to which me find what I more so like getting on stage and talking about. But we'll get into that. It was fun experiences, fun times.
But
But it
wait,
was,
question.
yeah,
You played basketball. How tall are you?
I'm 5'11".
Oh, nice.
Yeah, man, but we got to make up for the height. You know,
Yeah.
you short, white Jewish boys, we're the shooters.
Nice. Okay,
Shooters and the
cool.
passers,
Just
yeah.
3 points.
Hmm.
Awesome.
But don't be intimidated by height. I have dunked before.
Really?
Yes.
That's very impressive.
And I
I'm
coach.
5'9". I can't dream of dunking. Even in my dreams, I fall short. It's like so close.
That's funny, even in my dreams. No, but it's fun. I coach also the basketball team there's a Chabad school here in Houston, like 7th and 8th grade boys. So
Oh, nice.
it is really rewarding. It's a nice thing. But to kind of keep it, it was more through when I had experienced different injuries in sports. I got introduced a little bit before then to meditation, but it was through the injuries that I kind of really got more into it, and I used it at the beginning as more of a performance enhancer, how to improve the performance of my mind. So when I'm stepping on the court, I'm unstoppable, and all the different physiological and mental benefits of it. As it progressed, and then I got out of the school that I was in, out of like graduate program, and I had an additional year to play basketball, but I got out of that as well. It became more of a daily practice, and using it to improve my character traits, envision a future, mystical things, learning just all about that. And I'd gone to different meditation retreats, and it was through my own kind of experience with meditation and diving into myself, coming to learning about who am I at my core, my true sense, that led me to open my perspectives about Judaism, because meditation means to become familiar with, and from the root meditar, and you learn to get beyond external labels. So I identified as an athlete, but at my core, I'm not an athlete. That's just a role that I play, which on one hand also is a powerful shift, because that transforms and transformed my performance. Because then when somebody approaches like the game as not their life, but this is just an expression of who I am. Like, you are not a comedian. You are Menachem, a soul expressing his, creative beauty and everything through the expression of comedy and script writing and all that beautiful stuff, which probably helps your performance as well, because you're not so rigid with doing it, at least how I am seeing and how the content's coming out. So like through that shift also, you come across different labels, and then so Judaism was one of those, but it never just sat well. It didn't click like that's just a religion. Like, there's so much more to that. So that helped me kind of open in short, or a little bit short, keeping open the perspectives to want to learn more and dive into what is really all of this about. And now that, in short, led to like a huge journey of exploring more of the beautiful tradition and mystical teachings in Hasidus, and practicing the Shabbat and all of that. And there's more, details in that, but that's a little bit about it. So I'd also like to turn that back to you and hear like about your, like the meditation you spoke about, but also feel free. I like how this is a conversation. So if you have any also questions about that, I'd love to share.
Sure. No, I'm saying that sounds amazing. My only note to point out is that Jews don't do long story short. We do long story long and long story longer.
Yeah.
I don't think the one thing that my wife always complains about is like when I have like an exciting piece of information to tell her, I'll be like, okay, so I was walking down the street and then you'll never believe. And she's like, just tell me what happened. I'm like, no, we need to get there. It's the journey.
Yes.
We need, like, I can't just give you the thing. And she's like, who did you meet? I'm like, no. And then I got a coffee, and then there was sugar and it fell. And she's like, it drives her nuts. But for me, like, again, it's a Jewish thing. You need the journey.
It's the buildup. I'm with you. It's the buildup.
100%. Exactly. Like, I was never the person that skipped to the end of the book and read the end of the book. I need to read the book. My wife is like checking the end of the book and then reads the book. So I'm
There
not
is
sure
that.
she's
There
Jewish.
is
We
that
sent
too.
out for a 23andMe. We'll find out in a couple of days.
Hey, there is that too, though. I once heard a great question, because a lot of times when we choose a movie and thing or a book to read, we kind of already know the ending. So it's more, it's instead of asking, is this a book I want to read? Is this a journey I want to take? Because like
Yeah,
you're saying, like you might know the joke already. So it's more so the journey is what's important.
for sure. I'll do that once in a while if, let's say, there's like a show that I need to know or
Uh,
need to watch for a pitch. So I like created a show and I just like need to like know about this show to reference it, but I don't really enjoy the journey that I'm going on. I
mm,
potentially will like read the Wikipedia and then just watch the last episode. Don't tell anybody. But yeah, so once in a while I'll do that, especially because there's just so much stuff that is out there and you need to watch and whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, back to the meditation, and it's so interesting to like kind of hear your perspective on it. Mine, I guess, feeds into it, but it's also kind of like a little bit different. Where yeah, it was just for me, the meditation was about like the first part is just kind of creating the structure, just like you kind of like pray every day. You have the moment of meditation. It's just kind of like taking a moment for yourself. And to me, it was also kind of about like just setting the day. So like a lot of people are like, oh, you need to meditate to like, push out bad spirits, push out bad energy. To me, I just like kind of like I've heard some people kind
Yeah.
of do it, as the like a cleansing moment. And to me, I kind of like that. And it's almost like a reset. So let's say, yesterday I didn't sell a script, or yesterday one of my jokes fell flat, or yesterday I didn't get the show that I wanted, or whatever it is. Instead of carrying the baggage of yesterday into
Mhm.
today, it's the moment to just like take a minute, let it all out, recenter. Why are we here? Like get that, kind of get in place, get in tune with who
Yeah.
you are, and then launch a new day. So to me, I kind of
Interesting.
felt like, and for me, it's hard to meditate for a long time. So just kind of giving myself that like, 3 to 6 minutes just to like recenter and just,
Yeah.
that really
You
helped me.
you said you normally do it after davening and eating, or do you ever do it beforehand?
So I know it kind of make it logically, it makes sense to do it before davening, but for me, I kind of do it after.
Interesting. Okay.
It's kind of like, I guess maybe this is like a bad way to look at it. For me, it's like kind of like the davening is the obligation. It's like you wake up, you're, like you thank God for what you were given. Like first, give it to God. That's what you get in the morning. And then after that, be like, okay, what about me? But even though I know what you're saying is like kind of if you take the minute to meditate, you'll be like centered to then daven better, which I should try that in theory. Like that makes sense.
Maybe. Yeah, because then you're getting yourself out of the way.
I
so
know.
then
But
so then when you're with God, you're like you're not thinking about the you know the uh, emotional poop. I like to say.
no,
I guess
to me,
like meditation almost like a emotional kind of like cleanse.
to me, it's the grumpy Jew in me. I need all of that baggage to yell at God and be like, really? We almost sold the script yesterday. Where were you? Where were you? And then once I kind of like emotional dump, I can then be like,
Yeah.
okay, let's get zen.
Well, so that's one powerful way of meditation. Have you ever tried using it as more of like creative for helping your creative things, whether it's a script writing or preparing for a skit? Because we also know the through meditation, there's different people like scientists that will hook up brain waves and they can measure what's going on in the brain, and it actually like expands the gray matter and makes different connections within the brain. So it actually is building, so to speak, the creative center of your brain. So it's like the it's called the corpus callosum, I'm pretty sure, that connects the left and the brain and the right brain. So they're communicating a lot more efficiently.
So to be honest, I'm kind of like newer to the meditation.
Yeah.
So I haven't tried it as much. For me, it's kind of like up until now, I've been using it kind of more as like just the reset and the structure.
Yeah.
But that does sound amazing. I probably should. I'd probably be
Well,
funny,
maybe
which
we'll
would
have
be
to talk more
helpful.
about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's in a sense, like you were saying, with the just kind of cleansing per se, it's also can kind of rise your awareness in a sense to look at things in a different manner. So then you can, different insights may come, or jokes, or different connections, because when the process of meditation, instead of differentiating it from contemplation, in which you may be, like the sages or the Rebbeim talk about often in different Maimarim, contemplating and looking from all angles at about a certain concept. But there's also meditation to get beyond and transcend a different level of different thinking or analyzing, and that slows down your brain waves. The brain waves, there's different states you may be familiar with, beta is what you and I are probably in every day. Everybody probably in a low to medium beta brainwave state. Whenever somebody's super active, analytical or stressed, it's at a higher state. And then there's below that, there's alpha, theta, gamma, etc. But alpha is a more of a dreamy, creative brain state. So if you can kind of get past a different thinking, the overactive analyzing, you can get to that alpha brain state. And then the brain, because now it's not focused on one different thing, it's allowing it to consolidate, and all the different parts of the brain are communicating, and therefore different connections might be made. And so you can see that's how I've had different kind of creative what's led to different creative writing and things of that sort. So
that sounds amazing.
Try.
I totally.
Here's an invitation for you.
Exactly. You're gonna make me better. My poor competition that thought they had a chance, now I'm gonna start meditating, and it's donezo. No, but it's kind of interesting that you say that, because for me, let's say if I want to put out an Instagram sketch and I can't think of anything, or I have the premise of a joke, because a lot of people don't necessarily realize how the structure of jokes work. Something funny will happen between me and my friend. They'll be like, "Oh, are you going to say that on stage?" And it's like, no, this was a moment. This isn't a joke. I can't relive the moment unless certain elements happen. Yeah. So sometimes what happens is you come up with a premise. So let's say there was a premise that I was working on, and the premise was anti-Semitism is the best thing that happened to the Jews, because we got so many fun things because of anti-Semitism. We got Hanukkah. Bagels were created because there was this Russian lord guy that was trying to kill us, and I think it was Russian, and we made bread that looked like stirrups because he was obsessed with horseback riding, and gave it to him, and he ate it and was happy and didn't murder all the Jews. So people don't realize how many amazing things came out of anti-Semitism. Yeah. So that's the premise of the joke. But the question is how am I going to present this to an audience? How am I going to present this to a diverse audience, not just Jews, to everyone? So for me, what I actually like to do is kind of turn my brain off. But how I do that is I'll go and wash dishes or cook. So I'll just sit there and I'll be scrubbing dishes and kind of get into again, it's not a traditional meditation, but it's a place where I can, because a lot of times if I'll overthink it, it won't come out good. And then just me kind of sponge and just washing dishes, cool. Or just your wife likes that cutting and cooking. Yeah, it was actually funny when I was younger. Whenever I got really stressed, I would wash all the dishes and clean. So my mother would come into the kitchen and everything would be spotless, and she knew that I was stressed out. Now I have a dishwasher, so it kind of takes away a little bit of the time of the meditation, but it's also way easier. But yeah, occasionally it's just nice to do that. So it's funny how sometimes your brain and your body finds its own versions of those things. You're saying how healthy and amazing meditation is, and it's oh, that's kind of interesting, because naturally, people will find those things. Yeah. Whether it's through napping or relaxing or reading or gardening or going on hikes or washing dishes, the brain does say, we need to take a minute now, we need to just unplug, turn off.
That's what's beautiful about Shabbat as well. I bet if
really is.
Are you anything like myself where you receive a lot of your better ideas and insights on Shabbat?
A lot of the time. It was funny, when I was writing music, I would always think of an amazing song on Shabbos, and I'd be we have two options right now. Option one is I hum this for the next 24 hours. Option two is I forget it and never remember. And it was actually funny. So the first year I was married, I wanted to give my wife something special for her birthday. And I was like, how amazing would it be if I write a song for her? That would just be so nice. So I was just like, kept that in the back of my head. And it was like Shabbos, right before Mincha time, I just thought of the perfect tune. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to remember this for the next, 3 hours. And I literally, I was just humming it in my head for 3 hours. The second Shabbos was over, I grabbed my recorder and I recorded it. And then me and my friends in an hour just threw it down in the studio and made it, which was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I've asked a similar question when I've spoken to magicians or entrepreneurs. Often talk about this and how they look at the world, in that, somebody let's say an entrepreneur is constantly looking around for things that they can fix because they want to better things. Is there a way, how do you kind of look through the world during your day, constantly asking yourself, maybe can I make a joke out of this? Is there something here? Is there anything like that?
I'm just
What are the
cynical,
lens of
grumpy
a
Jew.
comedian? What are the lens of a comedian throughout the day?
To be honest, comedians are usually kind of cynical. It's I kind of will walk into a scenario and be like, what could go wrong? What would be funny? How could this blow up in everyone's face a little bit?
So you do that.
So I do a little. I have that little bit of the cynical, how would that, but no, I try not to. I think that for me, a lot of the comedy comes a little naturally just from experiences. And what I feel like, and this is very real, when I push for it, it doesn't really come. But when I let it happen, it does. I was doing a set.
That's
and
meditation.
Yeah, it was I was doing a set, and it's usually my sweet spot for comedy is in LA, I usually do between 10 and 20 minutes. Unless I'm doing my own show, it's the spots that I get are between 10 and 20 minutes. So I, on the spot, you asked me right now, we can do 20 minutes of comedy, we're good. You asked me to do 30 or 40, and all of a sudden it's how do I want to structure that? Because the 10 or the 20, I know the jokes I want to go to, I can play around with it, I can involve the audience a little bit. The second I'm doing 30 or 40, so a little bit of a bigger commitment. So somebody hired me to do 30 minutes of comedy, and I was like, okay, that's amazing. And I'm like, what am I gonna do for the last 10 minutes? I want to write 10 new minutes. And I had it was a month in advance. I'm I have so much time. So I kind of sat and actively tried to write it, and I couldn't come up with anything. I'm oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it was just, none of it was working. And then it was finally the day before I was supposed to do it, I did it on a Friday night for someone's Shabbos meal, and they brought me and my family down. And then on Thursday, I sat and came up with this joke about how anti-Semitism is the best thing that happened to Jews, and also the origin of gefilte fish and a couple things. And they were kind of silly jokes. Some of those jokes I can only really use for Jewish crowds, but it was funny how I couldn't come up with it, and then by letting go and being whatever, I'll just rely on my old jokes, I then was able to kind of do what I needed to do.
It's a powerful lesson for everything in life. Wow. Given that, we mentioned a little bit at the beginning the power of jokes, and I think even in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe writes about how they would, Rabbah and other sages would share jokes before giving powerful lessons or discourses. Do you have any I'm curious, do you have any favorite kind of Hasidic stories or jokes that you love that just come to mind?
Well, I'll tell you what's very funny. In the Gemara, they always talk about how they said jokes before they started,
But they don't share the joke.
They don't tell the jokes. They never share the joke. They're that joke was really good. Now, if your cow gores his cow, and you're cows goring cows, give me the joke.
Yeah. That's a great point.
A great point. The Gemara is and by the way, for those who don't know, the Talmud is really long. It's a lot of books. Each book is really, really long. They have room for the joke. It wasn't oh no, there's a 300-page quota, we have to cut certain things out, and they cut the jokes out. There was plenty of room. They could have left it in.
I wonder what the jokes were.
What were the jokes, right?
Yeah, I
Were they
want to
not
be in
enough
that scene,
jokes?
just like about
Was
them
it
all
about a
laughing.
chicken
Yeah.
crossing the road? I don't know.
Or maybe this is deep, but maybe the joke is the lesson that they gave.
Dun, dun, dun. They were that good. Well, I'm saying we'll get to. I know we're derailing, but it's good. I think that in itself is a very important thing, and I think part of the reason that they opened with a joke is because opening with a joke makes you comfortable. When you're laughing, you're open, like you were saying, and then you can kind of receive things. Like you see a lot of comedians, they like consider a lot of comedians philosophers, because what a comedian does is he'll make you laugh, and then, or he or she will make you laugh, and then once you're like laughing, will then bring kind of like real thoughts to life. Like I was just watching Aziz Ansari put out a new special, and he had this kind of, interesting joke that was like about COVID. He's like, there are tons of people in this world that are struggling, but we don't care because we could help them, but we don't care. How do we know? Because during COVID, the government was like, stay at home, we'll give you money. But there are homeless people on the street who don't have money. If the government could have you just sit at home and give you money, they can give everyone else money. Like there's tons of money to be able to give to people. They just don't want to. And it was kind of like just an interesting perspective. You're like, oh my gosh, maybe they could. But it's just like these thoughtful things. But how they get you there is through the laughing. So, like it's nice to like make someone laugh, make someone comfortable. And that's also kind of the universal element of laughing, which is everyone knows what laughter is. And it's like everyone knows what a joke is. Everyone knows the experience. So like once I share my joke with you and you laugh, we all of a sudden have this shared experience, and then you're open and willing to talk. The best, I don't have like a Hasidic joke off the top of my head, but I do have a Jewish joke, which I find very funny, and some people might find slightly offensive. But to me, I just heard it last week, and I was like, this is brilliant. So Chabad is notorious for sending emissaries to all different random places around the world, around the country, and helping Jews and put on tefillin and different things. So there was once a Chabad rabbi who passed away, and in heavenly court they said, I'm sorry, we're sending you to hell. And he's like, but what? And he gets sent to hell. And at first he's sad, and he's like, you know what? I'm here for a reason. I'm going to be the shliach of hell. And he goes and he opens up a table, and he starts putting on tefillin on everyone and giving out Shabbos candles, and he starts being an emissary and spreading his Judaism. And a couple years later, there's another shliach who dies and gets sent to hell. And the shliach comes down and he sees this shliach, this rabbi, putting on tefillin on everyone. He gets inspired and he's like, you know what, that's amazing. So he goes and he starts walking, and he walks for 1, 2, 3, 4 days. Finally, after walking for 4 days, he sets up his own table and he starts putting on tefillin, and he starts giving out Shabbos candles, and being a rabbi, being an emissary, spreading the light. And after doing that for a couple days, the original rabbi comes over and says, sir, what are you doing here? And he's like, what do you mean? That's your spot, this is mine. And he's like, no, I'm saving it for my son.
Just the when you said the guy, I'm gonna be the shliach of hell, and just that.
I know. I was like, this to me, that was very funny.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's
rabbis have the territory for their son. Ridiculous. Silly Jewish joke, but I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that the power of humor is amazing, and I think that again, like if you talk to somebody about a real topic, sometimes it makes them uncomfortable, and it makes them especially like let's say you're talking about something like world poverty or whatever, like it makes people uncomfortable. They don't want to hear about it. But the second you kind of like make them laugh and just pose it as a joke, people laugh at it and they are willing to listen. And once they're laughing and listening, they actually potentially soak it up and take it in.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It also reminds me now, I think we can kind of conclude here. It's been amazing. But I read a book called The Power of Choice by Rav Dov Pinson. You're familiar with it?
I've heard of it. I have not read it.
He mentions a story. He has a section in there on laughter, and he shares a story of this great sage. And it's not necessarily like a funny story, but it proves it illustrates a powerful connection here between laughter and God. And there's this great sage walking down just walking over a bridge, and he sees, like, over a bridge over water, and he sees somebody drowning. And instead, like, normally you might think somebody would go in and save the person drowning. The sage, I don't remember if he wrote down the name of him or not, because often that's pretty important. But he screams to this guy who's like, he's drowning. He says, help, help. And he screams to him, say hello to the Leviathan when you drown. Like, the mystical big creature in the water. And the guy, like, starts laughing, the one who's drowning. And within this laughter that he receives, he, like, finds some kind of wood around him, grabs it, and ends up getting to safety. And the sage goes to him a little bit after he saves himself. And he says, whenever you're in fear or in some kind of worry like that, you can't see your surroundings and how to save yourself. So through the laughter that you can, like you were just pointing out as well, not just with entertaining or diving into an important subject, but also for our own surroundings, how to bring brevity and look at the things that are around us. And then Rav Dover Pinson commented that actually the numerical value in some, not all my audience may be aware of this, but we have gematria, which is the numerical value of different words, because each letter Hebrew has a numerical value. And when you can add it up, it helps you see connections and insight into other meanings of certain words. And so the numerical value for the word of laughter, I think it's about 416 or so, actually is the same numerical value as Or Ein Sof, which is the infinite light of God. So I found that like a very powerful connection there. So it's through the laughter that we can connect with the infinite light of God.
Could you tell this to my parents so they're less upset that I became a comedian and not a lawyer?
I'll send you the link.
I'll
send you the link, and then you'll send it to them.
Amazing.
But Menachem, it's been a real pleasure. I usually remember how I come across somebody's videos or Instagram, and then I start following and looking into them, but I don't necessarily, perhaps that's a joke itself. I don't remember exactly how I came across your stuff, but glad you did.
I
enjoy watching it, and yeah, it's a pleasure to connect with you, and thank you for this awesome conversation. And since you mentioned script writing, I've had in mind a book and different things to write, so perhaps we'll be in contact at some point in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah. Take care. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.